What is up, everybody? What's going on? It is Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. We are back. Today we are doing a Ben Simmons first half analysis. We're just going to talk quick takeaways and watch the tape of his stats from December, January, February, and March. Joining me today is my man, Justin. You know him on Twitter at J_Bersacetti. Justin, long time no see.
Yeah, it's been about 30 seconds since we were last live, and we got Ben Simmons here. We're going to talk about Ben Simmons, man.
Ben,
Defensive player of the year.
Period. Also joining us is my man Tiago. He is at T Scabia. Tiago, what's good?
Doing well, man. I'm sure a lot of people wish this was a James Harden podcast, but Ben had different ideas about this year. So I'm excited to talk about Ben. He's been awesome for about a couple months now.
Yeah. Before we go forward, let's take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about that James Harden bullshit, because that's where it really started. When we started these watch parties, Justin, when we were doing the post game shows on our channel, that dominated the conversation. It was out there.
God. It was every single day. Every single day.
That has stopped recently. You haven't really heard a lot about trading bets. Although if he does have one game, those people will show up on social media.
They're like Bradley Beal.
We know who you are. You look at. Let's talk about Ben Simmons right now. You look at his assist percentage and turnover percentage. What you love to see from the beginning of the season to now, that turnover percentage is on a decreasing trend. You love to see that. The assist percentage has kind of stayed the same. But when Ben's clicking and not creating turnovers, this dude is a beast. And you look at his true shooting percentage, has a slight increasing trend through the first half of the season. Justin, quick takeaways on Ben Simmons before we get to the video.
Yeah, and it kind of has stuff to do with what you were just saying about how early in the season he was struggling a little bit, and everyone's like, trade him. And it's funny how I think basically everyone on TPO was like, dude, he's in a new offense with a new head coach, and even the coach is making excuses for him. And Doc doesn't make excuses for players very often. So I think everyone just needed to chill out and be like, yo, he's going to be fine. He's going to figure it out. It's just new. It's going to be all right. And guess what? He figured it out. I don't know how high he ranks in point guards in the league right now, but I bet he's pretty high up there.
What about you, Tiago? Quick takeaways?
Yeah, all NBA players don't forget to play basketball, right? So when we were watching Ben Simmons early in the year, I mean, the guy was clearly struggling. It was obvious. I mean, anybody could say that. But to go from he's struggling to who should be out of here is a large, large leap. And I think one of the things that was not talked about enough is the fact that he was injured last year. So he really didn't have an off season. He had a short off season. Didn't get a chance to get in the gym and work in his game. You could tell he was struggling through a lot of physical ailments early in the year. And I mean, we can talk about when the switch flipped, which was that Boston game, if you guys remember, that fourth quarter of that Boston game. The date is January 23rd of 2021. And if you look at Ben's numbers from that point in time until now, it is a completely different player. And I'll just speak specifically to one way that he attacks the basket, which is off the drives, right? So before the Boston game, he averaged 11 drives a game. After the Boston game, he also averaged 11 drives a game. But the difference is very stark. So before the Boston game, 36 points percentage per drive. Now he's at 55%, meaning that he scores on 55% of his drives to the 36%. And then also just getting fouled. So he gets fouled at 8% before he got fouled at 6%. And field goals in the paint, 51% field goal percentage in the paint since that Boston game. And those games before, 29%. So it's an entirely different player. We can talk in more detail what those numbers mean. But, this player that the Sixers have now is a all-NBA, all-star, all day of the week. So
before you get to the tape, you look at Ben's pick and roll numbers as a ball handler. Right now, 18.6%, way more than he's done the past couple of years. We all kind of knew that. Points per possession is 0.82. Effective field goal percentage is 54.4%. You look at 2018, now very low pick and roll numbers there, but Free throw frequency is 15.8%. The turnover frequency, 25.3%. You want to see that go down a little bit. But again, this is really, truly his first time running that pick and roll. Tiago, what is your thoughts on Ben in the pick and roll, and have you seen any progress, and where does that lead to in the second half?
Yeah, so when I think about Ben in the pick and roll, and Justin may have a different perspective on it, but ideally you're looking at a guy like, say, Chris Paul, right? This guy has the ultimate pick and roll feel. I mean, he keeps his dribble alive. He can kind of maneuver the paint. He understands how to space himself within the paint while the dribble's alive. And those things are very powerful in that scenario because it really puts the defense at a disadvantage. Do I attack the shooter? Do I sag back? You know, there's a lot of things that happen in that moment. And Ben does not have that feel right now. So Ben is more like a downhill guy. If you watch, he's developing that. You can see he's starting to slow down and keep the dribble alive and do those things. But he's also the kind of guy who like gets in the paint, stops his dribble, or, you know, just knifes right through the defender's body. So I think with more playing time, he can develop that. And I also think it would benefit the Sixers to have like a true pick and roll, like backup point guard in a roster. You know, Shake is one, but he's still very young. A more experienced guy, like a Chris Paul type point guard, would really help him in that scenario for me.
Any thoughts on that, Justin, before we get to one last stat nugget, and then we'll go to the tape?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have thoughts on pick and roll because, to be honest with you, I just feel like I haven't seen enough of like Ben with it to like really have a super big opinion on it. But like I feel like kind of with what you're talking about, Chris Paul and how he compares to the pick and roll, I compare Ben Simmons to how he drives in and picks defenses apart by throwing the ball out to the shooters. It's like, to me, that's where he's a technician, is being methodical going in and being able to, if he has an open lane, go in and score, and then if he sees somebody, he can like literally like dish it behind him, throw it around a defender, throw it across court, perfect pass. Like it's just the amount of value that I don't think people understand, just the amount of value that you have in a guy who has the ball in his hands, who can literally get the ball in any way to anybody around him on the court. Like that's not normal. And I feel like Sixers fans like are now used to that and like think it's normal for a point guard to be able to do that. Like it's not every point guard could do that.
Here's some defense stats before we get into the tape. Pretty much across the board, the same compared to last year. Steal percentage is a little down last year. Tiago, any take on Ben's defense? Has it gotten better? Has it been the same? Where is Ben's defense?
Yeah, the numbers when it comes to defense and Ben Simmons, they are unbelievable. But I don't look so much at the trend because to me, this is the best Ben Simmons has ever looked as a defensive player. And now there's real talk about him being a defensive player of the year, and rightfully so. Man, I'll go back to that game in Portland. I don't know if you guys – I mean, I know Justin and I did the post game, but that last minute against Damian Lillard is everything that you need to know about Ben Simmons. I mean, Damian Lillard is a absolute late game murderer. I mean, he will murder you in the fourth quarter. Yep. And Ben Simmons like got to a point where like Dame couldn't even get the ball. Like Ben had completely engulfed him as a player.
Yeah, there's a reason why Melo finished that game off, and it's not it's not because like he was just hot right at the end of the game. Like it's because Dame could not get a shot off.
There is no way to measure this type of impact, especially in the playoffs, right? Because in the playoffs it gets down to isolation basketball, and you know my guy against your guy, and Dame is about as good as it gets, man. And Ben was like, "Listen, like I'm here. You're not getting buckets tonight." Yeah. And I'm very excited to see what that translates in the postseason because, you know, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, they have guys who can do that. And I just want to see, you know, does Ben defense translate in the postseason the way it has so far in the regular season? I think he will. I'm hopeful. And that's really the model the Sixers need to win a championship, right? Is Ben locking people down and Joel doing his work. So
it's one of the biggest reasons why the Sixers have been so successful in this first half. It's one of the biggest reasons why they're first in the Eastern Conference. It's Ben's ability to just lock down in that fourth quarter is just massive. It's almost like he's a force to be reckoned with. Like they rotate through the first quarters, and then Ben just takes over defensively. And his net rating is fourth quarter minutes are all up across the board. Not minutes, but stats. So that's something that kind of has been kind of the knock on Ben is like fourth quarter, he kind of disappears from the court, but not this year.
Yeah, I was about to say not this year.
No, man. And like those stats, like the stuff that I talk about is even hard to like measure in stats because like in Dame's instance, like he's just flat out denying the ball. Like Damian Lillard couldn't get the ball. And we saw with Donovan Mitchell last game, like fourth quarter, man, Donovan Mitchell was taking some wild ass shots. And that's because like Ben doesn't let you get comfortable. Like he's not gonna let you get comfortable. So when you get the ball, you're like, crap, I have to do something with this, or I'm not gonna get the ball again. Yeah, it's
he's
very
always
impressive.
active, and I think that's even a difference in this year that I've noticed is like around the ball handler, there's always hand movement, there's always picking up the ball, there's always something, especially at the end of games. But like I think that's one of the biggest things I've noticed a difference in is before it was him just staying in front of the defender, and yet even though his numbers are a little bit down when it comes to steals and everything, he is, like you said, Dives, making defenders so uncomfortable. Like just like intimidator is to the max when he's around.
Yeah, man. And you love the offensive game, how it's coming around too. I mean, that baby hook shot, that little fade in the paint, that's becoming his MO, man. Like it's becoming money every single time.
He's shooting over 50% on it, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Like that's becoming a powerful tool.
Definitely. And honestly, in the past, he's used it in past years, but he's gone to it so much more now. And it's just like when I first watched years past, I'm like, that does not look like a very efficient shot he's putting up there. And it's going in. And I'm like, all right, can't be mad at it. Can't be mad at it if it's going in.
Yeah.
I've always go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I mean, it's truly been a journey of a season for Ben Simmons. He's kind of started slow. You look at his point numbers, 13 points in December, 13 points in January. And really since February and a couple games in March, he has really taken over. 21 points a game in February. He's averaging nearly 18 points a game in 2 games in March. But you got to love the free throw percentage, 70% in February, which is amazing, 83% on only how many attempts? Only 6 attempts. But anyway, really, truly, the offensive rating has gone up 128 throughout the month of February. And I think a big part of that has been the decrease in turnovers. He was really, truly a turnover machine the first couple months of the year. He was leading the league, and I think he's really done a good job limiting those turnovers lately. I just want to kind of just get your thoughts on that, guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. I mean, he's a guy who can get a little bit out of control at times. You definitely see him more under control. I think that Sam Cassell has helped him slow down. You hear that a lot, like in post-game talk and articles, that Sam Cassell is in his ear like constantly. And I think that has a lot to do with it. So I will say this, like people use the argument that like Ben doesn't have a touch. I kind of disagree with that. I do think he's a little bit of a touch. The shots, it's looking smoother, especially at the free throw line. So I'm hopeful that that floater is consistent. And if he ever does decide to expand his game outside the paint, not saying it's necessary, I think there could be like a player there as well. So
yeah, so it's been a really strong first half for Ben. He made the All-Star game again. Where do you guys see Ben finishing the second half of the season? What are your expectations?
I would say my expectations is to stay around that 20-point mark. Like stay around the 20. Like I would rather him have 20 points and like 10 assists than have eight rebounds. Like, which I mean sounds a little odd. I think like to say I would rather I'm okay with his stats being worse than they are when it comes to rebounding. But like realistically, you have so many good rebounders on this team now, and you have a guy like Dwight Howard, Tobias Harris, who's a very, very good rebounder. Like I love the aggressive Ben Simmons we've been getting, and we've seen the aggressive Ben Simmons at times, but now it's at a more consistent basis.
It seems like, and Thiago, you could tell me I'm completely wrong, but it seems like Ben's impact on the game is just very directly correlated with the amount of shooting on the Sixers. If the Sixers shooters are hitting their shots, that's when Ben Simmons is just unbelievable. Like he's locked in a little bit more. But when that shooting's not hitting on any given night, that's when he kind of disappears a little bit on offense. At least that's what my eye test tells me. What about you, Tiago?
I don't think you're wrong at all, Chris. I'll even go a step further and say that it's more correlated with the players that are on the floor with him. So if you're going to put Dwight Howard in the paint, life becomes much harder for Ben to operate. So I think that finding the right balance of players to put around them goes a long way into unlocking a more aggressive Simmons. And the Sixers have pieces to do that this year more than they did last year. I will say this, like with Ben, like I don't see him as the type of player who truly embraces scoring the way that we expect most stars to do. Yeah. I think that his nature is to feed players the ball. We've all played with players like that in multiple sports. Guys just thrive off seeing other guys thrive off their passes. And I think Ben has that in his game. I think the idea that Ben can develop into consistent, 30-point per game guy or even 25-point per game guy may not ever materialize. And that's because that he can't, is because that he just doesn't have that in him. I think he sees that his value is more making players around him better, getting Joel their shots, getting guys 3-point shots. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like some players are built that way and are wired that way. So my expectation is that, Ben just remains consistent in his approach. And I think that, if there's a game where Joel is struggling or Tobias is not playing, go out there and show that you can put 30 points like you did against, Utah or whatever. So yeah, that's really my expectation. Just be who you are, man. Just be who you are. Don't try to be who you're not.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, go ahead. No, I wanted to bring something up on the screen soon when the video is over. So go ahead. Just go ahead. I'm trying to look something up.
And just speaking on his confidence over the last month or so, 65.6 true shooting percentage in February, 71% in March. He was down in that 54% range. And kind of like what was really kind of frustrating about Ben, especially early in the year, he wasn't finishing around the rim like we've seen in the past. And that's just something that I think we've seen kind of Ben become more comfortable in Doc Rivers' offense. And that really kind of makes you really excited about what it could look like in the second half of the year, in the pick and roll, once in those half-court sets when the playoffs start. So, I mean, Ben's defense is terrific. It's always going to be about him offensively when the playoffs start. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see that guy not just stand in the corner. I want to see him more involved on offense. And you kind of see that from Doc. He gets Ben the ball a lot in these first quarters. We've seen it lately where Ben will have like 8 points in that first quarter. Just get him involved because he seems to kind of fade away sometimes, or not saying he's disinterested, but we've seen a history of Ben, not just this season, but in years past, where he'll look terrific and then the next 3 quarters he's completely non-existent. I think we're just seeing a little more consistent Ben over the last month. Any thoughts on that, Tiago?
Yeah, I think that's a key point. The idea that Ben is going to sit in the dunker spot like Brett had him doing for most of his career, I think that idea is not in Doc's menu of options. And so I think you're spot on, Chris. And I also wrote about like Ben as a roller. So in a pick and roll, like he's more than a scorer. The Sixers have him also screening, but they also have him passing off pick and roll. It's pretty impressive. And, it's Doc's way of figuring out, like you said, like in the fourth quarter of a postseason game, like we're not just going to have you sit around and watch. So I'm excited to see what that looks like in the postseason. I think we're going to see a more engaged Simmons offensively. Again, it may not be in the form of how people expect scoring to come, but I don't see him as a bystander at all.
We just saw the play where he just like takes it one extra step and just dunks it on a fast break. That's what I want to see from Ben, like every freaking time. Like I don't want to see him just take 2 steps and look to dish. I want to see him, use his body, use that 6'10" body, and just bully his way and just get an easy shot right around the rim. And I think that's really decreased. We've seen a kind of a nice little decrease in that because he went through a bit of a trend of that dribbling into the paint, leaving his feet and throwing the ball out to the perimeter without even knowing where it's going. That's kind of really decreased, and that makes me extremely excited because there's nothing. That's like among the top of the totem pole in terms of Sixers frustrations. Justin, any quick thoughts on Ben?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a player comparison between Magic Johnson, like his best year, and Ben Simmons this year. And like I know we were talking earlier about Ben Simmons scoring and the different and like basically like Tiago, you were saying how he may be a player that just doesn't have it in him to score 20 like 25 30 points per game just because that's just not him.
Hmm.
And to me, it reminds me a lot of Magic Johnson. I mean, the most points that Magic Johnson averaged was 23 in a season in his career.
Yeah.
And he was on top of averaging like 12 assists. So like you look at a guy like that, and that is literally what I think Ben is trying to pattern his game around. Like you can see the post moves he's making, the way he's driving the basket, the way he's finishing. And if you aren't aware, go check out Brock Landis on Twitter. He's literally posting exact moves on what Ben is doing, and it's consistently Magic Johnson. Like, and I think that's important to see because he's playmaking for other people on the outside. He's getting to the rim, like, and it literally to me looks like Magic Johnson. It's scary.
One point on that, I think that if you were to ask his teammates if they like playing with Ben, I think they would unequivocally say yes, because he's the kind of guy who, one, is going to give him the ball at any point in time, and two, he's going to take away most of the defensive burden, right? So he's going to be like, who's your best player? I'm going to take him off the game. I got to imagine guys like that, man, like they have to love it playing players like that because they take so much pressure off you as a player. So I think it's been good for the team.
Yeah, so even like look at these stats quick.
Yeah.
So if you look at even field goals and field goal attempts per game, look at it. 6.2 field goals, 10 attempts. He's actually more efficient than Magic Johnson was in his best year.
Wow.
Like,
and I didn't realize Magic's per 36 he had more turnovers than Ben Simmons. That's interesting.
well, he also has 4 more assists than Ben.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a like the thing like turnovers, he got 3.9 in comparison to like there is differences that where he is better, but mind you, these stats by like I don't think this isn't Magic's best statistical year per like points, I don't think, or per assist. I'm not sure why it's used 1980, but hold on. I might be able to get up a more consistent year.
Austin says, I was told Ben was a bench player without a jump shot. Dude, I whenever we talk about Ben Simmons at the first half of the season, like I have to go back to like how many people were down on this guy, and it's insane. There's a narrative around Ben Simmons. I never understood it. People get a kick out of doing it. You know who you are, but it's really ridiculous. EEC says, notice that fourth quarter's Docs team's call plays mainly for Joel and Toby. We're going to be doing Tobias Harris really soon. But you look at Joel and Tobias Harris ISO numbers, their true shooting percentages are ridiculous. Is that beyond a better option offensively to have the ball in Joel and Tobias's hands? And really, that's not Ben's role. Ben's role is more of a Swiss Army knife and locking down the team's other best player. That's his job.
Yeah.
Steven says his assist numbers would be up if he could hit shots.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Could hit shots.
So the real quick, this chart's different. This is 1986 and 1987. So this is Magic Johnson's most points average, 23.9, and highest assists with points, with highest points. So he's 27 in this. So obviously, as well, Ben Simmons' stats aren't finished out because this is this year's stats for Ben as well. But if you really look at it, like this year, Ben's taking less shots than Magic was in his best year, but he's at a high percentage. And I think it's funny how people say like Magic Johnson like had a 3-point shot, like Ben Simmons doesn't. Like, look how many attempts Magic has, and this is when he's 27. Yeah. So like, I think people really need to think about that. Like, he's also more efficient than Magic was technically going to the basket, and in the 2-point percentage, he's a higher efficiency rate. Like, I mean, he's not as efficient from the free throw line, but just in general, like, I think it's important. Like, this is one of the best players to ever play the game, and Ben Simmons is close, and he's 24 years old.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
The original says we need to put more shooting this coming deadline. That's it. I mean, I don't know if you necessarily need a star player, but adding a few pieces there for Ben, really good shooters for Ben, is going to just make the second half of the season that much more fun. I mean, it's beyond obvious. They need to stretch 4, stretch 5. They need some shooting in the backcourt. They need some defense in the backcourt to get them ready for Brooklyn. So final thoughts, guys, and plugs. Lead us off, Tiago.
Yeah, like I said before, Ben, just be who you are as a player. You know, the 40-point nights are nice, and somebody said on the comments, they're very nice to watch, but sometimes they're not needed, man. Sometimes you just got to play defense, and there's value in him taking less shots, but setting up more open 3-point shots for others. So I think that combination with better shooters around them, that's a deadly combination, man. So that's what I hope the Sixers find in the second half of the year.
All right. This comment says it all. We actually have some smart, intelligent fans that join our chat, and it just makes it so heartwarming. If Ben scores 40 every night, it takes away from everyone else. How many times have we heard in the chats, Justin? Like, Ben is nothing if he doesn't score 30, and all this stupid discussions about Ben needing to be a scorer. That's not Ben. That's not who Ben is. And I never understood it. And if you haven't figured it out by now, then I don't know what you're watching.
Let me just say one of the best point guards in NBA history was John Stockton, and he never averaged over 17 points.
Yeah, and Utah would have won many titles if it wasn't for Michael Jordan.
Make sure you follow my man Tiago on Twitter at @tscabia. Check out all of his amazing content at thepainalliance.com. You can also see him during our Sixers post-game shows. Justin, final thoughts and plugs.
I was going to bring up this comment. I feel like he says Magic isn't the Skywalker Ben is, though. I actually kind of like. I don't even think Ben. When I think Ben Simmons, I don't think Skywalker. Like, I don't think LeBron James type dunker. I think like he's just not. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion. Like, my goodness.
Chris is like his 10th cup of coffee right now.
No, but I'm actually curious to your guys' thoughts on this real quick. Like, when you see Ben Simmons going towards the rim, what do you see? Because I don't think he's as athletic as a guy like LeBron James, or at least what I would say a Skywalker is. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not good with comps, but I think he's not as powerful as LeBron. I mean, he's just not. Yeah. LeBron is another level, and he's probably not as finesse as, say, other guys. So, again, man, he's his own unique player. I mean, he's figuring out. He's not a perfect finisher. He doesn't have all the moves yet. I hope he really works in the offseason is refining those moves, and I think we'll see an even better offensive player in the future. But right now, he's figuring out. He's just really figuring out right now.
Yep. But overall, yeah. Ben's a beast, and I think he's only on his way up, especially with the shooting that they're starting to put around him, and we'll see how much it gets better. But if you don't already, I mean, plug myself. Go follow me on Twitter. It's right there. It's mirrored, so I gotta
There it is. It's back. All right. Make sure if you liked what you saw, you can find Ben's pre-All-Star game highlight reel over at our channel. I also made a Ben Simmons best of best pre-All-Star game highlight reel. Go check that out. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow Justin on Twitter at @J_Persichetti. My man Tiago at @Tscabia. Thank you everybody here for watching. Catch you next time. Stay awesome.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia!